Hey everybody, welcome back. This is the Coding Sensei, and I am bringing you a simple video but a special treat. So we're going to be going over HTML, HTML5, and this is the HTML5 Crash Course, so welcome. Now, as you can see, I have this pulled up real quick. The difference between HTML, HTML5 is there really isn't a difference. They are the same language. The only change is that HTML5 added more things to the initial HTML standard. So HTML5 added semantic elements. It added a few different elements that you can use, and basically it's just better because it's easier to read, it's better for the web crawler, and it's better for accessibility. So HTML5 is what you're going to be using when we're building out layouts. So let's get started here. So I have a little web page pulled up which is using VS Code Live Server, and over here I have Visual Studio Code pulled up, and it's giving me a little error here. So I just downloaded Live Reload. So let's get started. So I would let's say I don't want this to be read on the page here, so I would use my keyboard, click up. I would hit on Mac, I would hit Command Shift Right, and then hit Command Slash, and then I can hit Command Right again. It's going to take me to the end of the line. So left goes, you can imagine left, and then right, Command Left Right, take you to the start, to the end of the line. So what I did was I commented this out. A comment is what is going to basically make it so that you're able to read the file here in the code, but you wouldn't be displaying that on the visual side of things, right? So let's get started building out a layout. So because, as I recommend using Visual Studio Code, it has Emmet built in, which is a way for it to you can use tab and you can use enter to automatically assemble the code, and there's sort of like a little language with it. But so in here I'm going to do HTML5, hit enter, and it builds out my boilerplate. So without going into crazy detail, as you can see, doc type HTML, HTML language. So basically it gives us the most important stuff, the stuff that we need. So inside of this head tag, it's going to hold all the metadata. Okay, so we have UTF-8, character sets, we have the viewports, initial scale, and I'm going to go ahead and change the title to HTML5 Crash Course. And as you can see over here, it changes it right here. Okay. Now, there are other meta elements, but these are the most important ones. You can add one for description, you can add a bunch of different elements, but we're not going to get crazy into that. So we have the body tag, and inside the body tag is where all of our other HTML is going to go into. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the header element. And as you can see with Emmet, it allows me just to hit enter. It's going to create the closing tag also. Not every single HTML element has a closing tag, has a closing element. It may self-close like a link. I'll show you right here. So for a link, oh wait a minute. No, I'm wrong. Links actually do have a closing tag, so I believe it's actually the image. Yeah, so like an element like image, it actually, you see there's not another dash image closing it. It self-closes. So there are elements like that to keep in mind. But we're just going to build out a basic little form, not navigation. So header, nav, I'm creating an unordered list. I'm doing a list item. And this by itself is going to create a list. So if I just do list item 2, remember to always save. So list item 1, list item 2, and it comes predefined with these little dots because it's a list. It's an unordered list, so it comes by default with the little dots. Now Google Chrome automatically comes with its own set of default styling. As you can see here, I didn't add anything to the margins or padding, but you can see that there is margin already added and some padding. So that is because of the browser itself. So there is a way to get rid of that without using something, I think it's called Eric Meyer's CSS reset. That's kind of much. There's a kind of a really easy way to do it, but back to this. So I want to turn these, but they aren't links yet, so I want to make it a link. So I would type A, set the link to this, so it becomes a link item, right? I can just copy it. Bing, bing, bing. So now, well, I'm using live service, so it automatically reloads it. So now I have link item. So if I click, it shows a little dash. No big deal. So, and as you can see here, we have it all laid out here. You're going to be using the inspector a lot if you're a web developer, so I would get used to it. Now, I had a senior developer tell me a while back that HTML is about 85% of the accessibility, and he's honestly right. If you set up the HTML page correctly and you set up the tabbing and everything and the links correctly with the metadata and stuff like that, you're on the fast track to making it very easy to pass all your accessibility audits and all that kind of stuff. So now here's where we start getting into some differences between HTML and HTML5. So in normal HTML before 5, we would define everything by a div and we'd add a class. So let's say for header, it would be like div with a class name of header, okay? You see that it's semantic, so things are being defined for us inside the element here. So it's section, and I'm gonna add a class. What's cool about Emmet is I hit dot, and I can type in, so I'm gonna make we want this to be a hero section, okay? It's typically called a hero section. It's like the first page with like the big image and sign up now and stuff like that. So it's called a hero. So if I type in section.hero, I hit enter, it automatically gives me the class hero. Already does it. That's Emmet. That's how it does it, okay? You would type in the element name plus dot to set it up, right? Now, here's where we start getting into classic stuff, right? So in this case, I want to add a div with the class container, okay? Now these classes don't have any styles set up for them yet, but this is honestly how I set up my HTML files, and usually this is how you would set up your files. You'll begin to see. But so I would do a container, and you know, oftentimes the container, you know, I like to use it for making the width, you know, making the max width a certain length in the window, but I also like to do what's called a flex container personally. So I'm going to make another class. Now remember, to all you newbies out there, there are no styles attached to these classes. I'm just making I've been doing this for a long time, so this is just how I do it. And the container element actually class is actually borrowed from Bootstrap. So Bootstrap has a container class that if you have Bootstrap, it becomes predefined with all of the min width, max width, padding, margin, all that kind of stuff. And if you don't know what padding and margin is, then we have my CSS3 crash course where I'm going to go through all that. So in a flex container, I call it flex because I like to use CSS Flexbox a lot when I build my layouts. And that's part of CSS3. So in this case, I would say, let's just call it div box. Okay. I'm going to hit Command right, go to the end. I'm going to hit Command Shift left, do a copy, Command right again. I'm just going to hit it one more time. So I have two flex items now, which is CSS talk, but this is how I like to set up my my layout. So I would hit enter here, and let's talk about, so H1. So in HTML there are heading tags, heading elements. I'm going to say elements and tags. I'm not sure if those are interchangeable technically, but forgive me, okay? So we have header elements. So there, it goes from H1 to H6. H1, there should only be one on the page for each individual page. That includes sections. So it kind of goes, so basically the web browser reads the HTML file from the top to the bottom, which is why we have our head metadata information up here at the top, because that needs to be read first, and then it's best practice to usually have our scripts, which are JavaScript, at the bottom of the file, so it gets to that last. The reason being is that it has a sort of order of importance of what is what needs to be read first. So it goes HTML, CSS, JavaScript, simply because JavaScript may take longer to load. Okay, but anyway, so back to the header. So H1, let's just type in hero title. Okay, or I could just type in HTML5 Crash Course once again. Right? So I hit P. So now we have our paragraph tag. This is some text. So our paragraph tag is going to hold our what do you call it? Our text. And as you can see, it's showing right here on the page. And there is a distinction between these sections. So header would be one of the sections, and then we have our section.hero, okay? Now, if I wanted to define it further, I could say section hero, command shift left, and command slash to make a comment. So then over here, you can see it right here. So it'll define it in that way. So we can just say for this, just say header section 2. And yeah, so this is the beginning of some of our, so now let's talk a little bit about the image. Okay, so I'm gonna do an image element. Now image, you know, so we would need a source that can be either from a file that we have in our project, or it can be from a URL that you got on the internet, alt. This is, now the alt is very important because it is gonna, when we have a screen reader, it's gonna be able to read the alt text to the person to let them know what the image is. And that's very important for many reasons, and it's a self-closing. And let's see here, so let's just add something here. I'm gonna add a span, and I'm gonna enclose this HTML5 inside the span. Okay, now this isn't best practice, but I'm gonna do this just to show you something. So I hit color red. So let me get into real quick the difference between a block level element and an inline level element. So a block level element is an H1. It's a P tag. It's an A tag link. It's a image element. Okay, these, when you put them on the page, as you can see, it's taking up the whole width of the page. Okay, doesn't take up the whole height. It takes up whatever the container element is, but it doesn't take up height. It fulfills the whole width. Okay, so what this means is that, so here, as you can see, I have a H1 and below it I have a P. Because they take up the whole length, they take up its own, it's going to be on a different line. So H1P is going to be on a different line. You can expect that. If I were to add a span, if I were to add two spans together, they would not take up the whole line. They would they would be next to each other. Okay, so a span doesn't take up space. It basically is a way for us to sneak in and add styling. So in the case of the H1, if I wanted just to make this portion of it red, I would enclose it in a span. Better practice to add a class and then add the styling to that class, but this is what's known as an inline style, and it's not good practice to do it, and because it'll override styles. And but anyways, so as you can see, that worked. We have it right there, but that is the difference between an inline and a block level, because it didn't go to another line, you see. But anyway, so let's make another section. In fact, let's do the footer. So the footer has a semantic element. It's just footer. Now I know you were wondering, but we can in fact add a class to the semantic element. So we can even call it footer. Doesn't make a difference, right? And let's say in the footer I want to add a container. Okay. Now you're probably wondering, now a lot of this, I'm actually going to use the same HTML file when I start doing the CSS Crash Course, just to show you how we build upon these things. But what I really just wanted to show you was the some of the semantic elements that we have at our disposal. And as you can see, we're still using divs to build out the sections of things, because divs are kind of neutral. We can add classes to them, we can add styling to them. So guys, I mean, this is really it. I mean, this is HTML5. Like, you know, let's say we want to make another section of testimonials. Okay, we're gonna do a container because I want it to fit on a certain, and as you can see, there's no, these things are just stretched out. There's nothing containing them at the moment, because while we do have the class container, we don't have any styles on it. Okay, so it's just a name. It's just a name right now. And let's say I want to make a flex container because I want to have some things here. Let's say I'll do a div box. Okay, so I'm gonna highlight it. So let's say in each one of these boxes I have a testimonial. I have, you know, I have something styled out there. Now, here's the thing. I know some courses will have you build out the testimonial with HTML, and we insert the image, and we'd insert the name of the guy and his description and all that stuff. The reason why I'm not going to be doing that is because in real life coding, we wouldn't build it out like that. We wouldn't build out the static thing. If there were testimonials, we would probably include something like a slider, and we would implement something like Swiper.js, or we would you know, it would be a part of a post type for WordPress, and we would use PHP and HTML to build something out in a slider. Okay, in real life we wouldn't build anything like that. So I'm not gonna waste your time and my time building something like that. But HTML at the core of it is the markup language. This is just the markup where we add the semantic elements, the classes, to prepare it to be styled, to prepare for the positioning, right? But this is like a newspaper with no color. And as you can see here, I didn't add anything, but if I wanted just to show you that it exists, it's not a myth like Bigfoot, right? So you have all the sections here. And yeah, and this is, I mean, guys, this is, and gals, you know, this is what it is. So if I just say testimonial section, you can see it's all evened out for us. Now, that's going to be the end of this course. So in the next course, CSS3 Crash Course, I'm going to go ahead and style this. It's not going to be beautiful and perfect, and you can see I already have my main CSS ready to go. I'll show you how to link it to this page, and we can start beginning making a real type website, okay? So stay tuned, and we'll talk soon.